Hi, this is Janet Fitch, and it is noon on Wednesday, Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, which means it is Writing Wednesday, where we talk about your writing issues, your writing questions, your psychological questions, your craft questions, and all kinds of writing related questions in between. And if you have questions for me today, put them in the chat. And if you have questions for me in between Writing Wednesdays, which is most of the time, you can send me your questions through my website, janetfitchwrites.com. And I can make a Writing Wednesday around your question. I have questions from different readers, watchers throughout the week. And I have one for today, which is kind of excited me. It's about dialogue, chemistry in the dialogue. Um, so chemistry in the dialogue is it's an art that has been kind of degraded over time. I think that um, people lose the sense of what dialogue is as soon as people are attracted to each other. And how do we frame that? And I think a lot of people base their dialogue on visual media, film, and TV. So you lose the dimension of the internals and use of the landscape and stuff that you get in a dialogue scene. Remember, we never um, part out dialogue and then um, landscape and internals, and as two separate things. There's the dialogue scene, which includes everything every scene includes, plus people talk. And I think probably the most important thing to remember about dialogue in general is that anything anyone could say, no one should say, that you're trying to write interesting dialogue. Your reader is the recipient of all dialogue. So, how are you going to entertain with the line as well as the flow of dialogue? Um, Dialogue is only for conflict. So, that should tell you something about chemistry in dialogue. When people are on the same wavelength, they track, meaning they don't have to say everything that comes to mind. They can say one thing and think another, and generally do. Um, because we have access to a character's internal world, you don't have to say everything the way you do in visual media. Usually, actors will use their tools, facial expressions, pauses, sly smiles. Maybe they're not actually looking at the person they're talking to, they're looking at the window, and your characters can definitely do the same thing. Um, it's how do you show when people are tracking, when they're interested in one another? Um, it in the beginning, there is more kind of a pseudo conflict where people will be adversarial just for the fun of it, just to tease. It's a tease, and people don't tease very well anymore. They're losing their conversational skills and all the subtleties, um, so that as a writer, you just charm the hell out of your reader who is not maybe themselves that well armed anymore to have a flirtatious conversation. Um, so it's really fun to have it in the dialogue in your book. Sarah, uh, this is uh, Sarah says characters finishing each other's thoughts and sometimes being surprised by finishing each other's or carrying on a sentence. That's a really good indication that they're tracking. Um, I think that there's the play fighting, is this seat taken? Oh, yes, it's been taken, you know, for a year. Can't you see, Waldo sitting there? There's a lot of playfulness in a good character chemistry going on. Um, People play with each other, and that's conflict for tracking is the opposite of arguing. Tracking is understanding what the person is saying. That, they go, oh, that, uh, that, that, that woman in blue, and the other one's like, yeah, I know. That's tracking. Um, where they don't have to spell it all out for the other person because they're very intimate. So they know what they're talking about. Um, People play games, lovers play games. Um, I think of the Paul Simon lyric, they're riding on the bus playing games with the strangers, with the faces. She said the man in the gabardine suit was a spy. I said, be careful. So somebody creates a fantasy, somebody creates a game like that, and the other person jumps into it. Whereas if they're not tracking, the person says, what do you mean they're a spy? They're, you know, uh, that guy is a mailman. It's like, okay, can't play. So this is what I mean by tracking. Um, Somebody sets up a game or is playfully disagreeing, and the other person doesn't take offense. The other person understands that we're playing a game here. And then I need to have something witty to send back. You know, I'll have to sit on Waldo's lap, or it, it's accepting the challenge to have this little um, play fighting. Um, but you don't want too much of it. A little goes a long way. The play fighting thing gets old really quickly. I know that situation comedies thrive on the bickering, but if you really want to show chemistry, you want to show that attraction building, um, then you might think twice about, uh, too much of the clever quipping, keeping somebody at a distance. That's a stage that you move through. How do you find wit versus sarcasm? Um, One is intended to amuse, and one is intended to score a point. If you were saying, if we're in conversation at a party, say, and you're being witty, you might draw attention to something, but your intention is to make me laugh, not to sting me. And I think that if you start with young people or awkward people and you want to show their attraction to another person, you might have them be sarcastic rather they're trying to be witty, but they don't know how. Um, and so they'll be sarcastic and actually push the other person away and then go, why did I say that? Why did I say that? Every young person who has tried to be witty and has been sarcastic and lost their potential lover has had that experience. It's like, ah, why did I say that? Um, you don't joke about somebody's pimples or their ugly dog or something like that, or call them a mommy's boy, without a good sense of whether they will be amused by it or not. Some people just want to get attention, so they think that if they're put people down, that will make them more interesting to that, and that is not the way it works at all. Um, it's one thing to say, um, to put down somebody's mom, uh, and another thing, and another thing to, tease somebody about, resembling their mom more than their dad, or something like that. You find, so you're looking for wit, but you don't want a steady stream of it in every, that goes on and on. A little goes a long way. Um, and like a little bit of that oppositional teasing goes a long way. The reader gets tired of it. Maybe lovers don't get tired of it, but the reader gets tired of it after a while. What else do we do? The tracking is really important. You can, the great pressure of eroticism is often in the suspense between feeling the attraction and acting on it. And often people don't act on it at all. One of the most erotic scenes I ever saw in fiction was a friend of mine's, who writes erotic fiction. And she has a scene with a language instructor who gets on an elevator with somebody who's clearly going to be a client, a very well dressed and groomed Italian guy that she's going to be teaching English. And it's like she's so attracted to him that she can't even look at him. She can't even look at him. And it's the hottest scene. And they have a little exchange about the weather, I think, or something basic. And these scenes show chemistry between characters by what is not said, but the contrast between what is said and then what's going on inside your point of view character, who is examining every little thing about this guy. And just like, by the time they get out of the elevator, you're practically passing out. So GB says, give us the author and the book. No, this was never published. This was a short story that I read in her in workshop, and it was so good. Hi, Wendy. So so chemistry, the play fighting, the making up a fantasy game, and entering into the other person's fantasy is just a lovely thing to do. Many good scenes of lovers, especially getting started, are mostly internal to the protagonist, and involve a lot of silences, little bits of wit, confession, you know, I stuttered as a kid, somebody who is trusting the other person, testing to see if they can trust that person, might reveal something more personal than they normally would reveal. Lying, trying to be, especially young people, trying to be interesting and mysterious, bringing up, how I was in the French Foreign Legion, come on, you're 17 years old, you weren't in the Foreign Legion. But it's a very charming for the reader. Remember, the reader is the recipient of all dialogue. It's a very charming thing that the reader understands full well what's going on, and that kid is trying to be interesting. And then what's the response? Is are they believed by, say, a naive young partner, a girl who's never been out of, Idaho? It's like, you were, wow. Or a more sophisticated person was like, oh, you were, how wonderful, how was the food? And then having their internal thoughts. If we're from the lover's point of view, then it's like, what's that? I don't understand that smile on her face. Um, does she believe me? Does she not believe me? Does it matter? Um, To Kill a Mockingbird seems to have some of these elements, even though not a romance. Yeah, all good dialogue has these elements, but chemistry, because um, characters can have chemistry that aren't romantically involved. You're in college and you've never been away from home and it's so weird, and you're in the cafeteria and you sit down with somebody and you start talking, and they've read the same books you have. They do the same things you do. They read the encyclopedia for fun like you do. I mean, and then there's like, whew, that's chemistry too. I mean, they're not going to be, you know, making out in a few minutes, but there definitely chemistry is being established. So it works in friendship just as well as in works whether it works in friendship just as well as um, in a romantic situation. Sometimes people are shocking, and they'll do things to shock the other person, and then they leave you, the person being shocked, to decide how are you going to react. Are you going to rise to it? Are you going to does it turn you off about that person, or does it intrigue you? And that's a real turning point in a romantic scene. In the beginning, of some people push you, and that can be also not a romantic scene. New friends, interesting people. There are certain kinds of people who will push you to see what's in there. Are you going to be shocked if I say I'm in a threesome? I live with two men and I'm sleeping with them both. Does that turn you off, or does that go, oh, wow, this is somebody really interesting? I've never met somebody like this. Or what are they like? Or what are the guys like? Do I want to join up? I don't know. So I brought some books anyway that have good examples of these kinds of scenes. The chemistry between fast friends, what makes that connection? Yeah, it's the similar thing. They can make up a game, and then the other person, wow, they could play that game. you know I like that person. We've read the same books. I remember, when you're a little kid, something like you're both wearing a pink dress and suddenly you're, sisters, you're twins. you know um, People who agree on, you find some, you know, weird source of agreement. I don't eat cheese. Oh, I don't eat cheese either. I don't like cheese. Yeah, I think it's really gross. They used to make me blah, blah. And then the other person will share something of them, and there's chemistry going on. Um, I think anything can make that connection. There's people who read things that the other person likes. Man, there's certain books. If I hear that person, one of her favorite books is one of my favorite books, there's going to be immediate liking for that person. Um, I mean, even, whereas somebody, you find out their favorite book is like Harry Potter, and it's like, oh, dude, we're never going to be friends. So any bit of information like that, that you recognize. But the there is a teasing quality about a forming of a sexual interest, that's kind of has a special quality to it. And there will be put downs if the weaker person feels overwhelmed. They might like send out some little jabs, like, not so fast, not so fast, please, this is going way too fast for me. Uh, and then how is that met? Is that met with, well, screw you, bye, or is that met with uh, a genial re, response? I have a scene in Marina M where this 16-year-old girl, like her big crush, has actually come on to her at a party, and it's it's overwhelming for her, and she doesn't know what to say. So she is full of sarcasm and put downs because she just doesn't know what to say to this guy who is older. He's 6 years older, friend of her brother's, and she's like, you know, uh, putting him down. It's like, you're an old man. Who would be interested in an old man like you? He's 6 years older, and she would say, and then she says, I don't know if I can find it, but she says things like, he says, well, in by the time the war is over, 6 years is going to be nothing, you know. Um, just absorbing her little put downs with an amiable quality. And he's very confident, and he comes in and is able to withstand her jabs that she thinks are like so heated and needling, and he's just like, I can deal with this. This is fine. They Let's see. He takes her. Let's see. They're in a closet in a cloakroom. And she's like still trying to deal with it. He has so he is a huge physical presence. So that's what I mean, that most of these scenes of people being attracted to one another are going to be internals. They're going to be the senses and what they smell like and how they feel. So here she is in the closet with this guy in the furs, it's Russia, before the revolution, and they're in a closet that's got all the furs that smell of the snow, and he's pressing her back into those furs. I mean, that's a hard one for a 16-year-old. Actually, I guess she's 16. It's hard for a 16-year-old to like find her balance in that kind of a situation, you know, and she's crazy about him. And all she can, she's feeling his physical presence, his scent, um, the, and then he says, "Are you going to wait for me?" He's a soldier. "Are you going to wait for me, Marina?" And she's like, "Don't make me wait too long. I'm not good at it." Like a little threat, that I could go with somebody else just because I've been in love with you since I was, 6 years old. Um, she's trying to defend herself a little bit, but he absorbs it. He says, I'll hurry then." He was unbuttoning his tunic. Were we going to make love right here among the coats? But he presses something into her hand. He removes something from inside his uniform, a velvet pouch, which he pressed into my hand, still warm from his body. So his physical presence, the warmth, his scent, is always going to be forward in a scene like this. Um, Chemistry is like, there is definitely chemistry. So she jokes. So joking comes up when people are nervous and they're feeling a bit overwhelmed. So this is when you have one confident character and then one nervous character. Interested, but nervous. Then you get joking. Um, Sarah says 6 years is a much bigger deal when you're 17. Yeah, that was Marina's age at the book's start. Yeah. GB says musicians, same notes when they speak to each other. Yeah, that's really good. I like that. Um, so then she says, he brings out something that's still warm from his body, and she's still trying to joke. What else do you have in there? I joked, hooking my finger to the open cloth, pretending to peep in Tolstoy. So she's sending out a gambit that, who else do you have in your tunic? Tolstoy. Um, and he can meet her because he's an educated man. He knows her. They've been educated in the same way. And so he says, only Chekhov, he's smaller, because Chekhov writes short stories. uh, and then it's a gift, and they can talk about the gift. Um, he would say stuff like, to remember me by, it's a bracelet, to remember me by, don't forget me, Marina, because he's a soldier and anything could happen, as if I ever would. So we don't have to reply. Remember that good dialogue is not a pingy pongy. You don't have to reply to everything that somebody else says. Somebody can say something like, don't forget me, Marina, and she can think the reply. She doesn't have to say it. As if I ever could. Um, let's see, here's another one. I hate to use my work, but I know it so well, it's easy to show examples. Um, here's a pickup. So the same man goes to her school, where the officers wait for the academy girls to come out, senior girls, and there he is in a sleigh, and she says, what are you doing here? Duh. What the hell are you doing? And talks, he's pretending it's very innocent. Because they're tracking, she knows that this is not innocent at all. Like, this is fate coming in a sleigh. But he says, oh, just thought you might like to go for a spin, join me for a cup of hot cocoa, and both of them know that this isn't the way. So there's often the uh, I hate to say the aggressor, but the instigator in this scene is pretending innocence, whereas both the parties know that there is absolutely nothing innocent about this, but they can play. It's play, and she'll play with that idea as well. Um, he remembers things about their past because he knew her in childhood. He was her brother's friend. So people bring up the past, things that they remember that the other person will remember, as a way of showing, you know, closing the gap. They're not strangers. They have past together. They know each other. I remember when you were 6 and you did this and you did this. And then the feelings that, oh, you remembered me? You still remember that? Oh, and that was so embarrassing. I remember, that my skirt blew up and my underwear showed. You remember that? And it's like, oh, I didn't remember that part. Well, of course you do. That's why you're bringing it up. Marina and Kolya, these are the two characters who are uh, Kolya is the lover and Marina is my protagonist. So Sarah says Marina and Kolya grew up together, had a lot of shared experiences. So it's interesting to see this with characters from different backgrounds and ages reaching for what they have in common from their childhoods. Yes, that's why people remember, sometimes they remember a song, like if I completely different backgrounds, we might remember a song that was big when we were both young, or we might remember, people remember the blackout in New York, say, or they'll remember, the Queen came to town or something like that. Laura says, hi, Laura. Hi, everybody. I didn't greet you all. Thank you. Um, so Laura says you have to be a psychologist to be a good writer. Um, you have to be a good psychologist to be a good writer of character driven fiction, not necessarily a good writer of sci-fi or a good writer of mystery thrillers, um, but definitely to write about people and their internal lives and their relationships to one another. Um, it's very helpful to be a good psychologist. Um, So GB says this is why class reunions are so important to many. And I'll tell you, as people get older, I can't tell you how many people I know who were divorced, are divorced, or widowed or widowers, who go to their class reunion. Maybe it's their 50th, their 60th class reunion, 40th, and hook up with someone from back in the day because they are able to track and they remember certain things and certain phrases and certain attitudes that echo. Yeah, class reunions are really very popular for people getting together with people who knew them way back when, or they didn't even know them, but they're of the same generation. Um, there was one more from Marina M. Um, you can mix things you need to say about the elements of the story in with the lovers. It doesn't, like, there's a lot of scenes in the Russian novels which deal with the political situation, and that'll come up in the middle of their love scene. So love scenes don't have to be I love you, I'm hot for you, blah, 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 your eyes are like diamonds, blah, blah, blah. They can shift and pick up other elements of the story that need to be dealt with. And then you can see where sort of elemental conflicts are in the personalities and aims and desires of the two people and show that they are different, even though so problems come up as you're showing the chemistry between. Um, this book is just an amazing book about relationships, written on the body by Jeanette Winterson. Uh, the Many of these books don't separate out the dialogue uh, from the internals and even don't have quotation marks. So it's hard. Some of them, like this, it's hard to know what the lovers say versus what they're thinking. Um, Nevertheless, I will push on. There were plums, and I broke them over you. You said, oh, yes, this does have quotation marks. You said, why do I frighten you? And that's a great question for one lover to ask another, to test the waters. It's a tease, too, because you're putting somebody on the spot. They have to, are they going to admit that you frighten them? Are they going to deny that you frighten them? How are they going to work on that? And so, internals, she says, frighten me? Yes, you do frighten me. You act as though we will be together forever. So, this is all the things like she might have said back. Um, but I don't know what she's saying. She doesn't say what the I is saying, only what you, the lover, is saying. It's very interesting. So I don't know what part of this is said and what part of it is thinking. How can I? You act as though there's infinite pleasure and time without end. How can I know that? Um, it's so beautiful, man. Um, and you said, the lover, I'm going to leave. I thought, yes, of course you are. You're going back to the shell. I'm an idiot. I've done it again. And I've said I'd never do it again. So this is just full of beautiful, beautiful things. Um, you said, I love you, and my love for you makes any other life a lie. And then the internal is, can this be true, this simple, obvious message? Or am I like the shipwrecked mariners who seize an empty bottle and eagerly read out what isn't there? And yet you are there, here, sprung like a genie to 10 times your natural size, towering over me, holding me in your arms like mountain sides. Your red hair is blazing, and you are saying, make 3 wishes, and they shall all come true. Make 300 and I will honor every one. So it's very interesting that one person has spoken dialogue and the other person doesn't in this. This is just a gorgeous book. Everybody should own this. Um, so GB says, Russian furs reflect much about Russia, survival, economy, etc. It's also so sensual, that scene. Um, yeah. Um, then there's this. Um, yeah, GB says writing about the closet of furs in Russia hits the mark in more ways than one. Alaska's history with Russia built on furs, uh, working in the Arctic, trapping fox and selling them to professional furriers. Yeah. Um, this book, this is my teacher, Kate Braverman, and her book of short stories, Squandering the Blue. She has a story in here that won the, is it Squandering the Blue? No, it was, there is a story. I'm trying to think of which story of hers it was. I thought it was Squandering the Blue. Oh, Tall Tales from the Mekong Delta. It's in this same collection. And she won an O. Henry for it. And it has an aggressive lover and a recovering addict who gets kind of entrained on his spiel. And he overwhelms her, is the way his love language works. And you can see the chemistry. You can see how they track. I'm Lenny, he said, extending his hand. We see him first. Um, he fell into step with her. He was short, fat, pale. He had bad teeth. His hair was dirty. Later, she would freeze this frame in her mind and study it. She would say he seemed frightened and defeated and trapped. Cagey was the word she used to describe his eyes, how he measured and evaluated something in the air between them. So that's how he's introduced, right? Not very appealing. But they track. I'm Lenny, he said, extending his hand. What's your name? She told him. She was holding a bag with packages of cookies in it. After the meeting, she had an appointment with her psychiatrist, then a manicure. She kept walking. You're a teacher? You look like a teacher, she said. I'm a writer, she told him. I teach creative writing. You look like a teacher, Lenny said. I'm not a teacher, she told him. She was annoyed. Okay, you're a writer. And you're bad. You're one of those bad girls from Beverly Hills. I had my eye on you. And then he's aware of him, details of him. Um, uh, you do drugs? What do you do? Drink too much? He asked. I'm a cocaine addict, she told him. Me too. Let's see your tracks. Show me your tracks. Lenny reached out for her arm. I don't have any now. She glanced at her arm. She extended her arm into the yellow air between them. The air was already becoming charged and disturbed. They're gone. I see them, Lenny told her, inspecting her arm, turning it over, holding it in the sunlight. He touched the part of her arm behind her elbow where the vein rose. They're beautiful. But there's nothing there, she said. Yeah, there is. There always is if you know how to look. So he's already taking over. He's already stepping in. He knows where to look. And because she's an addict, she knows that he knows, and she feels seen, and it's drawing them together. It's really, really, and he overwhelms her. He's very assaultive verbally, not attacking her, but just taking up a lot of space verbally, um, assuming that she's going to come with him. And she's lost enough that he just entrains her. It's really a really good story. Um, yeah, there is. There always is if you know how to look, Lenny told her. How many people by the door? How many steps? He was talking about the door across the boulevard. His back was turned. She didn't know. 4 steps, Lenny said. 9 people, 4 women, 1 old man. Look, I see. Let's get coffee later. And he's just on her, on her, on her. She's not going to be able to get away from him. And it's because they track. He tracks her, and she is flattered and aware, and um, she can't seem to find her feet once he starts going. So he's got a little bit of that Kolya thing going for him. This is another book, uh, Unbearable Lightness of Being, where the love scenes, you can see the tremendous attraction, and for different reasons, and um, different exchanges. Um, People, they have games, a lot of games go on in The Unbearable Lightness. And then with one couple, it's a triangle. Actually, there's 4. Uh, but the triangle between this doctor and 2 women. One is an artist, and the other is very serious girl from that he's picked up in the hinterlands, who comes dragging her enormous suitcase. So, you know, the lightness is the artist, and the heavy person is that girl from the provinces. Um, and they're just the most wonderful scenes between them. The guy is like an inveterate seductionist, practiced, and to see how he interacts with each of these 2 women is just wonderful. Um, let's see if I can find some dialogue scenes in this. Um, I mean, it's a lot, usually internal, but these are very good seduction scenes, and you can see how chemistry works with different people. Um, Garth Greenwell writes a lot about attraction. Uh, Very seductive, very disturbing, and people challenging. Um, Very challenging people. The way, almost every interaction in this book is a challenge. These are very edgy people, and there's a lot of if sexual extremes are upsetting to you, just be warned that this is he goes there. Um, but the interactions, the chemistry in this is super strong, and you can see how he pulls this together. Another really good book about, if you're talking about chemistry and dialogue scenes, is yeah, Unbearable. GB says, uh, Unbearable Lightness was a very successful art movie. Yeah, and great dialogue. Um, the Beauty of the Husband by Anne Carson is a long poem. Um, and it's about this woman's um, obsession with her husband, who is incredibly attractive, and she's been dumped. And she just is looking back through their romance and what the hell was that about? And what am I supposed to do about it? Um, I mean, it does have dialogue in it, um, and it has just some really important concepts about dialogue, about relationships, um, and why this woman cannot get over the loss of this guy and how their relationship unfolded. Really good. And then I wanted to just show an example. Oh, I just dumped a bunch of paper on the floor of games. I use that in Painted Black, which is a love story. A girl from a working class background, kind of rough background, um, falls in love with this sort of a prodigy, but the scion of a very cultured family. She's an art model, and he's going to the art school. And I have them go. They furnish an apartment, and the apartment becomes Paris in their minds, and they live this fantasy of um, they live this fantasy of who they would be back in the turn of the century, of the last century in Paris. So, living inside a fantasy is a really fun thing to do with lovers to show that chemistry. They She gives him permission, like they move in, and he wants to put murals on the walls, but he's such a well-bred boy, he just can't see. He had a uh, they had to put a deposit down on on their little house, and the landlord said, don't paint on the walls because they're artists, he's an artist. And so the landlord saw that coming and told him not to paint anything, not to touch anything. The walls had just been repainted. Navajo white landlord's delight. Okay, so this is them moving in together. Come on, she knew we were going to do it the moment she left. She went out. The girl is saying, screw it. She went out and got his drawing things, the charcoal and pencils, due us in Marmont. That's their fantasy location. And the way he looked at her then, he'd been to Harvard, but it had never occurred to him to defy a landlord's orders. What's she going to do to us, Michael? Nothing. This is what I love about you. Do have a lover tell the lover what I love about you is. How they blow in what way does one of them blow the other one's mind? This one blows his mind, saying, so what? The landlady said, don't do it. So, because she's a punk rocker and she isn't used to doing what she's told to do. She didn't care about that. And he goes, that's what I love about you, pressing his forehead to hers, his arm around her neck. You give me permission you don't even know. And some people have a hard time with sincerity. You get a sincere compliment like that, and it's like, how do I What do it's like, people don't talk to me like that. I don't know. So she jokes, I'll give you more than permission, she says, rolling her forehead on his. I'll give you the whole enchilada. Um, so they end up painting their fantasy room in Montmartre on the walls of this Echo Park apartment. So joining into a fantasy, giving each other, pushing each other, blowing each other's minds, or one of them blows the other's mind, and how does that track? Um, all of these are really good moves that you can make when you show lovers together that tracks the the chemistry rise and fall. And then they start knowing each other, and maybe other things come up that bother them about that person because they're starting to notice other things about them. And they might swing between the attraction and the repulsion that everybody gets when they know somebody a little more. There's going to be things that it's like, oh, like the window's open. What do you think? You're going to fall out? Maybe, or there starts to be conflict. So, what are your favorite scenes and love stories? Dialogue, dialogue scenes. Movies definitely are very good at this, but fiction should be good at this too. And think about your fiction and who does this well, because it'll give you more of an example of how to use the interior, how to use the landscape. Um, there's a great exercise in John Gardner's The Art of Fiction, where you look at a landscape and you write it like a house, or um, and you write it, this is the house my lover lives in, and then describe the house. Don't describe the lover, don't describe the love, describe the house, but in the light of that love. And then use the same landscape. This is the house my blackmailer lives in. Don't change anything about it except the way it's seen um, by your uh, protagonist. So maybe the house is so charmingly homey, the sagging porch with the sweet little um, porch swing, can end up being the shabby, you know, rundown place of your blackmailer. Be the same thing. So that's a really good exercise to do um, in this. And then remember, that you use all the techniques when you're doing a dialogue scene, that it's the dialogue scene, it's not just the yap. Um, and how people test each other, how they play, you know, they join into a fantasy, they upset each other. Is one person overwhelming the other, and how do you show that? Um, so there are a lot of tools that are at your convenience when you're dealing with this. So we've gotten through another Writing Wednesday. I hope this was useful, and I wish you good writing. Okay, thank you for joining me. Okay, bye. Oh, and I should say, if you're enjoying this, subscribe. Okay, thanks. Bye.